Hi friends, it's Lisa Hetrick for Gina K Designs. I'm popping in today to share a technique that I really enjoy using, and I've done it several times on cards lately using my new stamp set with Gina K Designs called You Are. And the technique that I'm going to share with you today is a watercolor resist. I'm going to use the main wreath image and the heart image in my new stamp set. So we're going to go ahead and get started by building the background using a piece of watercolor paper that I've cut to a 4x5 and the wreath image from the stamp set. Going to use the Versamark ink pad and some of the Gina K Designs fine detail white embossing powder. I've sped up the video a little bit after I've applied the Versamark a couple times and stamped the image down very randomly all over the watercolor paper. And you'll notice that I don't always clean my stamps really well. So I just keep stamping the wreath all over the watercolor paper in a random pattern using the Versamark ink. And then once I'm finished, I went ahead and applied the Gina K Designs fine detail white embossing powder. And I just kind of shake off the excess a little bit, and you'll notice that there's a couple little boogery spots on there, but that's okay. Once we go ahead and apply the watercolor mediums, it's going to all disappear. So then I went ahead and let my heat embossing tool just kind of heat up a little bit. This really keeps me from scorching the paper because I tend to get a little close to the embossing powder. So I just go ahead and heat everything up and make sure all of the embossing powder is completely heated up, and I really love the way it looks. The detail, and it's kind of a little bit grainy, and I'm not so worried about that little boogered up spot either. So I decided I wanted to add a little bit more detail to the piece by grabbing some of the leaf elements and some of the other bits and bobbles from the UR set. So right now I'm just placing them in strategic places on the design, like in between elements of the wreath, so that when I go ahead and ink them up with Versamark and emboss them, they are just going to add to the whole element of the design. Now it's time to get to the juicy, messy fun. So I'm going to use these three Distress Oxide inks and mash them down onto my craft mat right next to each other so that I can use them as a watercolor medium. I like abandoned coral, candied apple, and picked raspberry for this design. So once I've got all the inks down, I'm going to really mist a lot of water onto the design and get it nice and good and wet. And then I just kind of mash it all into the color, just kind of zipping it around in a circle to kind of let all three of those colors mix mash together. And I really like this technique because it blends these colors really well and you get kind of a really neat effect. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly kind of heat set this a little bit so I can go in and add a little bit more of the green color, the twisted citron, to the top of the design. So again, I'm going to go ahead and wet my paper really good in that one area and then mash it right into all of the color to see if I can pick it all up and get them to blend really well together. So I just kept dipping the paper into the color and just kind of mashing a couple corners here and there into the color, and then went ahead and heat set it all again. I really love how all the colors blended together to get this rich, deep pinks and greens together. The design is now really revealed, so you can see how random my stamping was. But I'm really digging it. It's very organic looking, and I think it's going to make a great background. I just wanted to point out that sometimes I get embossing powder in places where the stamped image wasn't, and this technique can be a little messy, but I really like it. So now I'm going to go ahead and stamp the two heart images. But before I do, I'm going to use the Gina K Designs Premium Dye Inks as a watercolor medium. And I'm going to save that red color for a technique that I'm going to do in a few minutes. But I go ahead and put those colors down onto my craft mat and add some water to them. And I'm just going to drag the heart die cut images through the inks and just let the colors that are there get applied to the paper. Now the paper that I did use is the Gina K Designs layering white cardstock. Once I was finished applying color to the hearts, I went ahead and heat set it just to get the paper nice and dry for the next step. I then went ahead and inked up the heart image from the UR set with some VersaFine ink because it was a really nice, deep, rich ink, and stamped it right down on the die cuts. Now that the hearts are stamped and the background is done for the watercolor, I wanted to figure out where I was going to position the U stamp and get that ready to be heat embossed into the space. So I was really looking to create a nice triangle-like composition here. Now that I know where I want to position the U stamp, I'm going to use the Gina K Designs Fine Detail Black embossing powder. So I inked it up with my Versamark ink pad and went ahead and positioned the U stamp down onto the watercolor background, getting it ready to be heat embossed with the black fine detail embossing powder. Now it's time to add the black embossing powder to the stamped image, and I just got it all over the card and I needed to tidy it up a little bit, but not too much. And I went ahead and heat embossed it so that that deep, rich black embossing powder showed up. There were a couple specks and a couple little boogered up spots, but I really, really like the overall effect of it. It kind of set me up for some of the messy technique that I'm getting ready to do with this red ink from Gina K. I went ahead and mashed it down onto my craft mat. I love this cherry red ink. So I went ahead and took my paintbrush, dipped it into the water, and then using the paintbrush, I just kept dipping it into the dye ink and then tapping it on my finger to create a splatter effect all over the background. This is a really quick and easy way to use your dye inks with a little bit of water and create a little bit of extra texture to your watercolor backgrounds. I really love the way the final product came out. It looks very organic and fun and a little bit messy, which is right up my alley. So here's the final card, and I really hope you enjoyed today's technique, and thanks so much for watching.